Namaskaram to all. Welcome to the next session of Sambhashanam. Today we have a very special speaker whom most of you know. By just seeing him, you know him. So we have Dushyant Sridhar with us today. Dushyant, welcome to the
Very
Sambhashanam
happy.
series.
Thank you.
I don't know how to introduce the speaker of the day. If I were to say he's one of the most sought after Upanyasakartas we have of this generation today. He has spoken on a variety of topics related to Sanatana Dharma, a variety of collaborations he has had with musicians, with dancers, and has presented on multiple topics in these collaborations. He is also the adjunct faculty of the Shastra University for their graduate program of Indic Studies. This is, I would say, the tip of the iceberg. I would just say Google his name and you find everything about him on the internet. So I don't want to, I want to really talk with him and understand a lot more. So I don't want to elaborate more on the profile. So welcome, Dushyant, once again to the Sambhashanam series. I'm really happy that you could make it for the Sambhashanam.
Very happy here.
So Dushyant, all of us like to hear stories. Like it's been an age-old thing that you hear the stories from your grandmother and it keeps going on, right? And this technique of storytelling is something that we in Bharatavarsha, we have been leveraging a lot. Be it in the Upanishads, the Itihasas, Puranas, all these are in the form of stories, which helps reach to the people in a very easy way, and the message is given so beautifully. And around this itself, after those times of the Puranas and itself, we started developing a lot of traditions like that of Upanyasams, Harikathas, and many things started developing in terms of storytelling. So the first thing is you hear a lot of these terms, Harikatha, Upanyasam, Pravachanam, so discourses. So many of these terms are there today. Are there any definitions of these and how do they differ from each other? Could you just elaborate a bit on that?
Thanks. I can call you Subbu, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks, Subbu. See, as you set the context for the question, you did say that the art of dispensing knowledge has always been from a Maharishi to his Sishya, who will later
Yeah.
become a Maharishi. So, be it Valmiki, the conversation that Valmiki and Narada had, be the conversation Parashara Maharishi and Maitreya had, be the conversation of Vaishampayana and Janamejaya, uh, be it any conversation, we have had one person who elucidates a certain topic and we have a recipient. But if you've seen a lot of these examples that probably I have stated and you have known and our audience will know, it has largely been one-to-one.
Hmm.
Very rarely we come across something which is generally spoken in the public. We have one example mentioned in the Mahabharata of Janaka. So this Janaka happens to be the earlier kings of Videha Rajya, not Sita's father, Siradhvaja Janaka. So we have Animandavya, the rishi who comes and speaks to the ministers and the king, and that is when the famous statement Pradiptayam Mithilayam Name Kinchit Pradahyate comes.
Hmm.
So there is a context of, or there is an example or a precedent where they have spoken to a larger audience, more than a one-to-one gathering as well. We have
Hmm.
had the concept of Shuka and Shaunaka and all the rishis who speak to the rishis in the Naimisharanya Kshetram. So we
Right.
have had examples. So if I have to typically get an example of an upanyasam like how we do today in the earlier days, I may not be able to get because I have personally never done research on that. But
Okay.
I would rather say that the concept of having 1,000 people and 500 people and 2,000 people seated in large AC auditoriums in the pre-COVID era has been in the last 50 years because the
Hmm.
microphone and the loudspeakers have helped us. Otherwise,
Hmm.
however towering the personality is, be it even a Ramanuja or Shankara, reaching out to 1,000 people at one go may be tough.
Right.
So the art, what we know or call as Upanyasam today, has been largely only in the last 100, 150 years, but the art of narration or storytelling has been immemorial. One. And second thing, you also spoke about the styles of speaking. So
Yeah.
what I have learned of my acharyas, from my acharyas, and what I've noticed of people is Upanyasam is the general art of speaking, which of course has a lot of storytelling in it. But it also has some amount of Vedanta concept coming in it. It will not be completely Vedanta in nature, but I will have to speak of Vedanta. That is Upanyasam. So you are catering to your masses, you're bringing out the essence of Ramayana, Mahabharatam, but you're also introducing Vedam and Vedantam in it. Because there is a shlokam which goes, Itihasa Puranabhyam Vedam Samupa Brahmayeti Vibheti Alpashrutat Vedat Mamayam Praharishati. So when Pracharanam comes of Itihasa Puranams, it is to delineate the underlying concepts of Vedam and Vedantam. So probably the derivation is the person who delivers Upanyasam should have essentially undergone Vedanta Kalakshepam under his Acharya. So it is just not the art of speaking, but it has to be the art of also injecting Vedantic knowledge in your masses. So to me, or my understanding of Upanyasam has been, a person should have undergone Vedanta Kalakshepam. See, the word I'm using is Kalakshepam. Interestingly, Kalakshepam is a word that people use in Bhajana Sampradayam. And Kalakshepam is also used in the general sense where a person knows the art of wailing away time or wasting time. But it is something that we use in Sanskrit. For example, words may not, Mahavrikshaha could need not mean the large tree. It is a short one. It is a very short one. Likewise, Grama Simha doesn't indicate the lion. So likewise, Kshatrabandhu doesn't denote the friend of Kshatriyas. So likewise, Kalakshepam doesn't necessarily mean what it means etymologically, which says wasting time, which means spending time usefully. So Kalakshepam in the Vedantic parlance is Rahasyartham. So it has to be in closed doors. So if I have learned Sri Bhashyam, which is the essence of Brahma Sutras, Gita Bhashyam, which is the essence of Bhagavad Gita, along with Tatparya Chandrika and Gita Bhashyam, and then Rahasyatrayasaram, Bhagavad Vishayam, Shatadushani, and in Smarta Sampradayam, you have Shankara's Brahma Sutra Bhashyam, Gita Bhashyam, Viveka Chudamani. These are all supposed to be Kalakshepa Granthams. So it is not meant for any person who comes. He must have reached a certain level to absorb the concept. So Kalakshepam is at one level, closed doors, largely one-to-one teaching. From Kalakshepam, we take the essence of Vedanta and we intersperse with the art of storytelling and we reach out to the public. That is Upanyasam. Third is a concept where we have a history which is called Harikatha. So it is said, or whatever I've heard of researchers speak, is around the 16th and the 17th century when the Marathas, who started occupying the lower part of the Deccan, when they started getting into Dravidian land, when they started getting hold of the fort of Tanjavur, and they were the Marathas, their Nayaks and all that. When that was the period of dynasty, then they introduced the concept of Harikatha. So we have the Sambar concept coming from Maharashtra to Tamil Nadu. A lot of things. You have the beautiful shrine of Ganapati in the southwest corner of Brihadishwara temple, built by the Nayakas, not by the Rajaraja Chola. So, so we have a lot of introductions coming in terms of art, architecture, and various other things during the Maratha rule. One such was the art of storytelling, which is Harikatha. That is why we had, even today, people who practice Harikatha as an art. They have a certain way of starting. Dhimikita, dhimikita, bajamranga, brahmatala kari, gajarana, tandavandritya kari. So they will have a Vithala. And then to reach the content to the masses, they left the Vedanta on one side. They concentrated more on the story and dramatizing it. So the way of dramatizing is they started introducing music. Perumal Vandaram Ketaram Shonaram appadinu solliட்டு இருக்கும்போது, so this is something that we generally don't do. Though we may be able to do it, we don't do it in an Upanyasam. Upanyasam is very rarely we use music. So I have had the liking to make it Sangeeta Upanyasam, where I introduce proper kritis. But as such, Upanyasam is not Vaikunthe tu pareloke Shriyasardham Jagatpatihi Aste Vishnu Rachintyatma. Velukudi Krishnan Swami will start like this. So even if my Acharya Karunakaracharya has to speak, he will speak of lines from Vedam. But there's no proper singing. But there's nothing wrong in introducing singing, but it will not get as simple as Harikatha. So we have a Kalakshepam, Upanyasam, and Harikatha. But the irony is, people take level 1 and level 3 and make it Harikatha Kalakshepam. So that's where it's yeah. So I've given a long answer. Your next question.
No. I think from your answers, many things are springing up. You mentioned about this Harikatha being from the Maratha tradition, and also during the Maratha, also it would have been probably during the time of the Varkari saints and all to reach out to the masses, right? To take up this message of Hari. I think the main focus there was a lot on Hari. Now, even if you take this, is there any specification like you mentioned about Upanyasam being taking up a text or anything, but having the Vedantam as its base? And Harikatha being, of course, the later part. Is there any specification of the topics, specific restrictions on what topics can be told in a Upanyasam or a Harikatha? Or are they open to all sorts of topics?
See, what I have noticed of my personal experience, and I've seen like stalwarts giving it in the past from the days of Brahmashri Sengalipuram Anantarama Dikshitar. I haven't seen him, but I have had a great influence of him because my grandfather had great association with the Sengalipuram family.
Okay.
And then I've heard a lot of Balakrishna Shastrigal, which largely falls into the Sangeeta Upanyasam and the border between Sangeeta Upanyasam and largely into Harikatha category.
Right.
And I've heard Mukkur Lakshmi Narasimhacharya, Tupul Lakshmi Narasimhan, and Karpangada Swami, then Velukudi Varadachar Swami, Karunakarachar Swami, Santana Gopalachar. So generally Upanyasams these days have become one day, it's like T20. One day I give a lecture, Ramanum Kannanum. But generally it has been like a mandalam, 48 days of Mahabharata Upanyasam by Anantarama Dikshitar Val, then 24 days on Ramayana. So it has always been in series. So it's like a test match. You develop the story over a period of time. So the corollary is probably, to answer your question, Srimad Ramayanam, Sri Mahabharatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, to some extent Sri Vishnu Puranam. It may not be as popular as the three, though it gets a lot of status in the Smarta and Vaishnava Sampradayam. But the first three, be it Srimad Ramayanam, especially Bhagavatam, Saptaham and Navaham, they all fall into the proper Upanyasam category. Mahabharatam is very well suited. And then we have Vishnu Puranam. So this is what largely people do. But in the last few years, people thought, why don't we take up even Vishnu Sahasranamam? In fact, Anantarama Dikshitar has given a series on Vishnu Sahasranamam. Later, he took up even Srimad Bhagavat, Devi Bhagavatam. And for him, the hallmark was Srimad Narayaniyam. So, so when there is a precedent, I can always refer to that. Otherwise, this one-day Upanyasam series has now been an emerging trend because people don't have the patience, or probably transportation is becoming very tough. So that's why. But otherwise, these are the topics. Yes, there are a lot of scholars who are also giving lectures on Saundarya Lahari, Sri Lalita Sahasranamam, Shiva Puranam, which is also very welcome because they are also texts to be delineated, though they may not fall into a certain theology, they may fall into a different theology. They may, for example, Saundarya Lahari, though by Adi Shankara, may imbibe a lot of concepts of Shaktism. And Shivananda Lahari may borrow a lot of concepts from Shaiva Siddhantam because it uses Pashu, Pati and Pasham. So, but they are all topics to be delineated, and we hear so many people. We have Chaganti Swami, then we've got Samavedam Shanmukha Sharma, we have Garika Pati, we have Sudha Seshayan, we have, a lot of them speak, we have Damodara Dikshitar. They all give topics on, discourses on these topics as well.
Understood. Now here, when you mention Dushyant about the objective of you delineated the objectives very nicely of Kalakshepam, the Upanyasam, and Harikatha. Are there any because we in Bharata Varsha have this very unique this one of defining a shastram for everything. If it is Sangeetam, it has a shastram behind it, a science, this is how it has to be sung, etc., etc. So like that for Upanyasam or for Harikatha, have there been defining texts which has come in tradition that this is how it should be rendered? The one who is rendering should have these qualities, because we are used to hearing these things in typically Sanskrit literatures.
See, we can pick up bits and pieces from various scriptures. First of all, to my understanding, the Peetham where we sit for an Upanyasam is called a Vyasa Peetham. So Vyasa was one of the earliest rishis that we know who dealt with a variety of topics, and whatever we are speaking of today is because of his compilation. Be it the Brahma Sutras on one side, be it Mahabharatam. In fact, his father was so proud of him. He said, Krishna Dvaipayanam Vyasam Vidhinarayanam Prabhum Kohyanyo Bhuvi Maitreya Mahabharata Krit Bhavet. A very, very popular verse from Vishnu Puranam. Who else but my son can come up with a work like Mahabharatam? So Mahabharatam on the other side. We have Upanishads on one side. He compiled Puranams. So the Peetham is rightly called Vyasa Peetham because there is nobody else who can match that stature. But when it comes to picking up the art of speaking, I feel the art of speaking can be picked up from Bhashana Kaushalam chapter, which comes in Kishkinda Kandam, where Rama describes to Lakshmana about Hanuman's art of speaking. So he says, Nanrad Veda Vinitasya Nayajur Veda Dharinaha. There are about 6 verses for which Maheshwara Tirtha, Govindaraja have commented immensely as to how a public speaker should be. We have some Subhashita Shlokams as well. Geeti, Shigri, Shirah Kampi, Tatha, Likita Patakaha, Anarthagyaha, Alpakanthi cha, Shadetej, Pathakadamaha. So a public speaker should not have these flaws. A public speaker should have these good qualities. So there's been one side, public speaking. So that we can absorb a little from Vidura Niti, more from Ramayanam, from a public speaking sense. And we should also know how to resort. See, to my understanding, how I come in a parampara is, I cannot speak of one thing today and speak of the other thing the next day. Like, for example, if I'm going to speak about Pradyumna's birth to Rukmini and Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam, again compiled by Vyasa, says it is the 6th day. Whereas Vishnu Puranam, compiled by Vyasa, of course narrated by Parashara, says less than the 10th day. So today when I speak of Srimad Bhagavatam, when this situation comes, I must have read both the Puranams and I must tell the public that both are right because 6 is still lesser than 10. So both of them were right. Same is the case with many situations. So I should know how in the kokku chikkal edukkradunu per Tamil. When there is a mesh, you should know how to take it off. You cannot leave it to the audience. For example, in Srimad Ramayanam, there is a place where the Vrittantam of Kakasura comes. So Kaka, who is the son of Indra, he comes and kind of physically assaults Sita. So that is when Rama gets to understand, and then he looks at a blade of grass, and then he leaves. He takes that, and with the Aishika Prayogam, he makes it into a Brahmastram. But there, Kaka Matra is the word that is used in Valmiki Ramayanam. So, but a lot of the speakers, Upanyasakas, will generally end up saying that it is Indra's son Jayanta who came as a crow. But Vedanta Deshika refutes this in Stotra Ratna Bhashyam, where he says, Na ayamapi Jayantaha. This is not Jayanta, because Itihasam says Kaka Matra. It has never said the word Jayanta. So, and he was not in a family planning where he said that I'll have only one son. He could have had many sons. So we should be very, very careful when we delineate. And today, if I speak one thing, I should not go to another Purana and speak something completely diametrically opposite and say that was another topic, this is another topic. I should give clarity to my audience. Suppose I say this is what creation process is, from Mahat to Ahankaram, then 3 gunas, then I should not go to another Puranam and say, see, that Puranam speaks creation like that, and this Puranam, no, I should be able to resort. So there are certain formulas where Acharyas teach you how to resolve those differences. So all this is very, very important when it comes to public. So first is, of course, the art of public speaking. Second, you should know how to resolve the differences. Third, you should know how to make it contemporary. See, for example, in Sri Vaishnava Sampradayam, as much importance we give to Brahma Sutras and Bhagavad Gita and Vedam, we also give importance to the very humble verses of the Alvars. So, which we call it as Nalayara Divya Prabandham. And for us, it is one of the major Kalakshepa Granthas. So we undergo Kalakshepam for the 1,000+ verses of Nammalvar called Thiruvaimozhi under an Acharya for about 3 to 4 years. And this every verse of Thiruvaimozhi has about 7 commentaries ranging between the 9th century and the 14th century. So there is one very famous commentary called Eid. It is called Muppattarayirappadi. So the beauty about Eid, the popularity amongst the Tamil fans and followers is because in those days it was very contemporary. So the Karta called Vadakattirividi Pillai, who was the student of Nampillai, when he wrote the commentary, he would give examples of that particular era. He would say Naluranai Pole. So Naluran will be a person living during that time. So he made it contemporary rather than keeping it very raw and very dry. So my acharyas, be it my acharya Karunakar Acharya, who's taught me Sri Bhashyam, whom I take a lot of inspiration from, he will always give examples of a cricketer and a star. So people who have heard of Sangalipuram Anantarama Dikshitar will come back to me and say, why did you give an example of Ashwin Ravichandran? See, if I would give an example of a cricketer who lived in 1970s, naturally my younger generation will not know of it. So I should give an example from the current style. So the speakers should be abreast with the current world and should know how to intersperse that. So these are largely the styles, because for music there are various other things, but here this alone will suffice.
Right. And from what you're saying, Dushyant, it appears that Upanyasakarta has to do a lot of internalization of the content that he is studying. So the point that you said of trying to resort the different probable inconsistencies or differences between things, he must first himself understand what it means. Yeah. What is the reason for these things, and then come out with his interpretation of it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. So first, understanding and relishing and enjoying, all that should be there. That internalizing with respect to certain value system is very, very important. See, for example, if I'm going to talk about Shastram, the basic thing is Kalanjannam na bhakshayet, tells Shastram. I should not end up having those things which Shastram says nishiddham. So nishiddha kamyarhitam kurumam nityakinkaram, says Vedanta Deshika. So I should not, see, to be a perfect orthodox person is, to me, very impossible, but at least I can avoid onion, garlic, drumstick, radish, turnip. There are a few vegetables. See, only then will I be able to get onto the platform and say, see, there is a Dharma Vyadha who comes in Mahabharatam. He was a butcher, yet did not consume non-veg. So if only I practice, will I have that little morality to even tell somebody, don't do this. So that's very important. But on a lighter note, you said internalizing, right? Too much of internalizing and realizing will make the Upanyasaka again very dry. Because see, the more you start moving towards Parabhakti, Parajnana, Paramabhakti, what will happen is you will start losing interest in all the Janaranjakam examples that you give. So again, you will become a Vedantic person where you'll start talking about Jivatma and Paramatma. See, the person whom I look up to in this matter is Sri Nochur Venkatraman. See, Nochur Venkatraman leads a very, very simple life, so much filled with bhakti. Absolutely. And even his discourses on Ramayanam and Mahabharatam may end up telling less about the story and more about the Vedantam. That's because he has internalized too much. So probably, there should be a mix of, you should know where to stop. You should tell yourself, don't internalize so much, so that you're still being relatable to the public.
Very, very interesting. And, ultimately what you're trying to say is that all this is for giving a message to the public. So at the end of the day, the people should still remain in connection with you. They shouldn't lose that. I think beautiful, beautiful. Your interest, Dushyant, how did you get into this tradition? Like, did you have any people in your parampara, in your tradition, who were doing this? How did you get attracted towards this?
My mother's a school teacher, so she grew up largely in Bangalore. So she was modern for those days. So my father was also from Bangalore. He studied in St. Joseph. So they were pious people. They are still pious people. But when you speak about the art of public speaking, which is Upanyasam or Harikatha, whichever way you want to call it, I can't find anybody whom my hands can reach. Nevertheless, my mother's father's father, who is my great-great-grandfather, which is my Yellu Tata. His name was Pundi Rangaswamy Iyengar. And he was a practicing advocate. He was also an honorary teacher for literature in the Auxilium College, and he was also a Harikatha exponent. So, so maybe that's the lineage that I can trace off. But it's not going to become like a Surya's movie of Yera Marivu, where we say like after generations your DNA can get activated. Maybe that was also in me, wherein I had the flair to speak publicly. So every elocution competition in the school, be it like subtle, simple science is a boon or a bane, to some there's more red on the wall, whatever. Even some topics were crap, but even then I would end up going on the stage and talking. So for me, that art of public speaking was always there. On the other hand, uh, generally in an average Tambram family, the child can't sit idle at home. So you have to either learn music, you'll have to either learn dance, or you'll have to learn an instrument. Because ultimately you're going to you have to position yourself in the society and call yourself legitimately like a Tambram. So I ended up learning a lot of Sanskrit shlokas, Tamil Prabandham, music, and so on one side this was happening, on the other side public speaking was happening. So this Upanyasam is just the marriage of the two, right? So it's public speaking on ancient scriptures. So at one point in time I started developing a flair for this, and that happened during my stay at BITS. And then I started learning Vedanta under various gurus, about 6 of them. And so see, typically in a general Upanyasaka, if you take up Sriman Velukudi Krishnan, who's very popular, his father was a great Kalaksheba Adhikari in Upanyasaka. Lot of them. So in the Anantarama Dikshitar family itself, you'll have Babu Dikshitar, you have a lot of Dikshitars who came after that. They'll always trace their background to Anantarama Dikshitar. I don't have immediately anybody, and I don't have a miracle also. See, generally people expect, wherein I was sleeping one night, somebody woke me up and said, okay, now you're going to speak. No, I don't have any such miracle. Maybe whatever I'm speaking is of course the grace of Perumal, Tayar and all Alvars and Acharyas, but I don't have one incident which is like two roads diverged in a yellow wood. So it's all simple.
Beautiful, beautiful. I think what matters, Dushyant, is apart from the miracles and other things, is the interest and the passion to do it. I think if that is there. No, you mentioned about, during the course of our last few minutes, you mentioned about these different great Upanyasakartas. So we have had this tradition, right, Ilya? There has been a tradition from Sengalipuram, or there has been different traditions from which people have been doing this. Upanyasam, this one. So when you also learned under your guru, what is this? So what is this mode of learning? So it would be a very traditional orthodox mode of learning, right? Especially when you're learning from these kind of gurus who have come from that kind of a parampara. So would it be that you would spend a few days at your guru's place learning these commentaries and other things? So how did it work for you?
See, of course, the art of delivering an Upanyasam or a Harikatha is something that I've never learned. So what I've learned is only Vedantic texts, which many people have learned in the past, which they're still learning. Not all of them who learn become Upanyasakas. They will all just be students who aspire to learn Vedantic knowledge. So if I've learned Tirunadin Tantagam, Sri Bhashyam, Gita Bhashyam, Rahasya Tresaram, Shatadushani, Bhagavad Vishayam from 6 Acharyas, it was not a Gurukula Vasam for me, because I was in Pilani and then I came to Bombay for working. I was working there for 5.5 years. So then I used to go to Chembur every Saturday and Sunday, sit for those 2.5, 3 hours, learn and come. So it was more, it was like a classroom. So a day scholar. So there was nothing in those days. Yes, you will have to really serve your Guru and Guru Mata. You'll have to wash their clothes and all that. Fortunately or unfortunately, I couldn't do any of that. Because while I was born, I'm the only son, so we had a washing machine and we had a dining table. So suddenly asking me to go fetch cow dung and washing would have been tough for me. Nevertheless, for the sake of knowledge, I would have done all of that. I have great love and regards for my guru, but see, that is where there is a paradigm shift in the Gurukula system itself. And one of my gurus started teaching me Sri Bhashyam through Skype from 2010. They're all Orthodox gurus. So even before the COVID era, because see, we were distances apart. One is in Bombay, I was in Bombay, he was in Chennai. So how will I learn? There was one guru who said, I'll never teach you online. So what used to happen is, every time I used to go for work to Chennai, I used to make time during the lunch. I never used to have food. I used to take a cab to Nanganallur, go learn, and then come back by 3 to continue my work. So one guru said, I will not teach you online. The other guru said, I'll teach you online. So I have regards for both. They had their own ways. My point was, if I leave out that generation from learning, then I wouldn't be left with anybody whom I can learn from. So that was very important, because of the 6 people whom I have been bestowed knowledge of, one was an Acharya of Ahobila Mutt, the 45th pontiff. he attained Vaikuntha Prapti. Then we had the great Padma Bhushan NSR Swami, so Navalpakam Rama Tatachar Swami. So he attained Vaikuntha Prapti, and then Srivatsangachar Swami, who was the erstwhile principal of Sanskrit College, he attained Vaikuntha Prapti. So I could see they will not bend things for me. I had to adjust my timelines, but that was the thing. But the art of public speaking, since you are a great practitioner of classical Carnatic music and you've learned under revered gurus, you will know there is something called as a pathantaram or a pani. So, for example, a GNB school will have a Bhriga, and Semmangudi school will have a very detailed way of presenting the Sangatis, and there will be a DKJ school, DKJ school, who are experts at Dikshitar Kriti, because they came in the Ambi Dikshitar Pani, so they will know the proper nuances of how to Saundarya Rajam. So probably they were very good with Dikshitar. Some were very good. For example, if I have to look at Purandara Dasa, I will look at MLV. So MLV had her own style. So MS had her own style. So they had a pathantaram. Here also we have, but since I don't follow one particular person, I take those pieces which are very suitable to me. For example, Anantarama Dikshitar school had this practice of telling a shloka in a detailed way. It will be like, if suppose he's going to tell from Saundarya Lahari, he will say, Tvadanyapanibhyam abhayavarato deivataganaha Tvameka. இந்த இடத்துல அம்பாள் வந்து சொல்றாளாம், அதை கேட்டுட்டு அந்த இடத்துல. So that was his style. And Sundar Kumar Anna follows that style. For example, Ramam Dasharatham Vidhi Mam Vidhi Janakatmajam Ayodhya Matavim Vidhi. So I have borrowed that portion, which I thought that was the best way to tell a shloka. Now I have also borrowed certain portions from Velukudi style, because when he delivers, for example, a Pasuram, he will say, generally a Pasuram, some of them will have it like maybe that may not go well in an Upanyasam. So Velukudi Swami has a style. Pashiturthu kidanda parmagatku pandorunal mashudambin nirvara manamila pananya. So when the Tamil Pasuram comes, I will adopt his style. And when it comes to probably making it slightly interactive with the audience, which is generally very tough in a large scale audience, but yet I do it, I have adopted it from Karunakaracharya, my Acharya style. So it's a mix of lot of these things. And whenever, wherever I sing, I adopt little of Balakrishna Shastrigal. So so it's a jamboree. So whatever is comfortable to me, and that's what I do, because that's what I do.
No, I think it's beautiful, Dushyant. At least it validates, and since you have learned under such great gurus, who have been the authorities in those respective areas, and the fact that they have all been able to teach you in the modern ways in many cases, which itself validates the fact that they also want this to go to the next generation. That is the primary objective, rather than keeping it coded. I think beautiful. Now, one question, Dushyant, like for example, I can sense that, right? When you speak also, and when I hear your Upanyasams also, it is not just a very good speaker. There's so much of hard work behind, knowing these Shastras in that detail and knowing from the respective authorities, so that you don't misquote anything, you don't say something that is not what the Shastra says, and then trying to bring it to the public. But many times, the people who want to get into this, or who seem to be interested to this, probably don't take necessarily the entire 100% of what goes even behind, because they see only the front part of it. So what is what would be the few words you would say to people who are interested in taking up these things? What are the things that they need to keep in mind?
See, unlike music or dance, this has not evolved into an art which can be taught to a large extent. Of course, you can learn Vedanta Kalakshepams. If you're a Smartha, you can learn. You've got like stalwarts like Krishnamurti Shastrigal. You've got a Mani Dravid Swami. They're all like stalwarts in the Vedanta part of Advaitam. And you've got Prabhanjanacharya, many people in the Madhva Sampradayam and Sri Vaishnava Sampradayam, you have many. So if you're an aspirant for to be an Upanyasaka, you have to learn that Vedantam, whichever school you like. See, it doesn't mean that if I'm an Iyengar, I should follow only Visishtadvaita school. And if one is born as Smarta, they should like only Advaita. There have been so many exchange programs between the schools.
Right.
So you find a lot of the so-called Iyengars who listen to Advaita lectures. There are so many Smartas who listen. So deciding my school of philosophy or the philosophy where I'm inclined to is in my hands. So I must listen to a lot of scholars, then decide which is, read a lot of books and decide this is my school of philosophy. I should fix that philosophy. It doesn't mean I'm disregarding any other philosophy. See, I cannot be a Visishtadvaitin, an Advaitin, Advaitin, Beda Vedin, and Achintya. All of the same go. See, that's what people confuse. They say everything is one. See, that's a very wrong way of approach. Each school has its own way of thought. You follow one, respect the others. That's very important. So you take the essence of others. So I can still like Adi Shankara, I can still love him, I can respect him, but I will still be a Visishtadvaitin. So what's wrong? So
Correct.
I should first know what school of philosophy I would like to adhere to. Second is theology. This again becomes very debatable. So for example, I am a Vaishnavite. I follow Vishnu and I believe that Perumal and Tayar is the final destination for me, Upeyam.
Right.
Now, I have great respects to Lord Shiva because in my lectures I quote a lot of Tevaram, Tiruvasagam, and I have great respects for Kartikeya. In fact, Kartikeya, whose Skanda, forms such an integral part of our Shastram. Right from Ramayanam, there is a Kumara Sambhavam in Valmiki's Balakandam. Two, there are 3 places in Mahabharatam where there is a clear Ashtottaram itself of Skanda in Mahabharatam, and he forms a major part. So I have great respects for Kartikeya. I have great respects for Pullayar, because had it not been the scribe Pullayar, where is Mahabharata for us today? So, but at the same time, I will not confuse. I mean, rather, I'll put it this way: I will take up Vaishnavism as my preferred school of theology, and I will delineate works on Vaishnavism, whoever has done, be it Shankara, Madhva, or Ramanuja. And I will surely give respects to the other deities and bring them into the picture. But I may not jump to, probably the closest example is, I may not take up a Shivananda Lahari, because if I have to do justice to Shivananda Lahari, I have to position Shiva as the first. Again, see, I'm not a researcher. See, a researcher is different. A researcher has to give importance to all. But I have decided this is my theology. So being respectful towards other theologies, not speaking ill of other deities and not speaking ill of other communities, but upholding your philosophy and theology is very, very central to being an Upanyasaka. So to impress upon a larger audience, just because I have a 1.4 billion Indian population, if I have to attract all, there is a Shanmatam. I take up, today I'm going to talk about Ganapatyam and say Ganapatis. No, that's not the way. Maybe even if Shanmatam, the theory itself holds true, it says that choose one of them. Know all of them, choose one of them. It doesn't mean you walk on 6 different paths, 6 different days. Then where are you going to go? So it's very, very important. So that is the second thing. Third thing, I feel an Upanyasaka should not feel that I will not talk. I would see the Upanyasaka should develop a style which is all encompassing. So it should not be restricted to a few. For example, I don't know how to put it. See, I'll put it in simple terms. The Upanyasaka should aim at being Janaranjakam, is my take. When I say Janaranjakam, not cracking jokes every now and then and making people feel very embarrassed and all that. Not that way. But if I have 1,000 people in my audience, I should ensure by the end of my 2-hour lecture, at least 90% would have understood that completely. So my delivery should be modified and rectified in such a way, engaging fashion, that I should hold them for those 2 hours. See, you have a 2-hour, 32 minutes Rajamouli's Bahubali movie. And you have at least main characters, about 30-32 characters, and you have side characters. You have variety of colors. Look at the animation, look at the action scenes. It goes for 2 hours 20 minutes and there 30 minutes, and there is an interval at the end of 1.5 hours. Because people, even despite after giving so many things, people will want to go to the washroom, will want to eat something.
Correct,
I
correct.
have given lectures for 3 hours at a stretch and for 9 days, and there'll be 1,000 people attending. I go to smaller towns like Pollachi, Udumalpet, Katpadi, where 1,000 people are seated in a Kalyana Mandapam for 3 hours. And there's nothing on the stage. See, as Upanyasakas, most of the times we are in Angavastram. And imagine we are average looking, and we just have a veshti. Nothing on the stage, one simple medai, and there is no interval, and there is no music as well. 2 3 hours I have to speak, I have to engage my audience. So imagine every second I have to work towards it. So
Right.
as I speak, I should ensure that my content goes and reaches their ears. It's not about, okay, I've decided to speak this today. If an Upanyasaka does like that, he will never be an Upanyasaka, is my thought. You know what you're going to speak today, but when you look at the audience, you should gauge from their facial expressions how good they are at gauging, understanding the topic. You should immediately know how to change the tone and tenor, how to get them into fold. So suppose if I see a lot of Tamil speaking people who may not be well versed with Sanskrit, immediately I'll shift to Kamban and Villiputturar. And if I see a lot of Palakkad Ayyars listening to my Upanyasas when I go to Kerala or when I come to some parts of Bombay, then I'll immediately shift to Narayaniyam, or I'll quote from Nadacharitram of Unnai Warrior, and I will go to Tunjathu Ramanuja Ezhuthachan's Adhyatma Ramayanam. Suppose Telugu people are listening, so I have to quote Amukta Mallida for them. So you should know quite a few things, and you should know how to change at that point in time. Suppose it's raining, you should know how to manage that situation, and a lot of these things. If the mic goes, you should not shout. You should know how to manage that situation. You should end up telling. So a lot of these things you learn as an Upanyasaka. So Upanyasam as an art, I don't have a perfect formula. It all comes with grace and practice.
Beautiful. And from what you just mentioned now on the qualities, it also shows how prepared you must be, in a variety, not just putting blinders and going around a track that this is what I'm going to do Upanyasam on. Even if you're doing an Upanyasam on something like Valmiki Ramayanam itself, you need to know so many things to make it more interesting to the people. I think that's a beautiful thought. And also, as you were saying, something struck me that even the reason the Puranas and other things came is to make things much more easier for the people. If you were stuck on the Vedas and only that literature is literature, it will start distancing itself. So
Correct.
I think a very valid thought and beautiful. I think I didn't even know that how the last 40 minutes passed away, in this discussion, Dushyant. I think thanks a lot for this. Wonderful, because we have heard a lot, you speaking on multiple topics, but I wanted to have a chat with you on Upanyasam itself. What have been your deliberations over these years as you have been doing Upanyasam? So I had a really great time, and I hope all the Rasikas also had a great time. Thanks a lot for this, Dushyant.
Namaskaram. Thank you.
So Rasikas, as you saw, we had a wonderful discussion with Dushyant. You can Google him and you can find it's such a inspiration for this generation and the generations to come. Until the next Sambhashanam, Namaskar.